The next one is the perfection of patience. I'll define it for you. A virtuous mind that can remain indifferent to any form of harm inflicted by others. I'll just finish. Can voluntarily endure suffering. Big emotion, big definition. So Shantideva said, unruly beings are like space. Like they say in space, there's many, many atoms, so space is limitless. So you can say unruly beings are limitless, are like space. They cannot possibly all be overcome. But if I overcome just thoughts of anger, this will be the same as vanquishing all. So if you have unlimited enemies, they cannot possibly be overcome, but if you overcome your own anger, simultaneously you're overcoming all enemies. And then he also said something about putting leather on your feet. I like this one. That if you're going out into the world and there's thorns, there's glass, it's a very rough ground, which is how the world is. So if you're going to go out and walk in the world, then you can do two things. One is you can put shoes on, which makes sense, and the other is you can cover the world in leather. So you can choose which you want to do. And of course we say, I want to put shoes on, that makes more sense. But in actual fact, what we usually do is we try to cover the world in leather, in the sense of removing enemies or telling others how to behave, how to make us happy. So if you think about it, is your behavior one of trying to get others to make you happy, or you're making yourself happy, in the sense of putting shoes on or covering the world in leather? You understand? I think you understand the difference, isn't it? It's very easy to think, of course I'd put shoes on. But in actual fact, we're often telling others what to do, If you put the top back on the toothpaste, I'll be happy. Just at home, simple little things, Your wife's always leaving the top off the toothpaste, or you're always leaving it off. And somebody's always telling somebody else what to do. And then from there, we build irritability. Right? Because it's the little things. And often it's the little things that start to really get to us and bug us, So with these little things, if you can endure the suffering of little things, you can start to endure the suffering of bigger things. If you can't even stay patient when it's just something very small, like somebody not putting the top back on the pen, and this starts to send you into a rage, Why can't you put the top back on the pen? It's so easy. So if you start to get really upset like that over these small things, then the big things are going to be much, much worse. So in the beginning, what you do is you start by tolerating and enduring suffering. So here it says, can voluntarily endure suffering. You can't endure the big sufferings in the beginning, so you can endure the small sufferings. The suffering of heat, the suffering of cold, I think often we don't experience now because there's a dial, right? We put the dial on 22 and then we're comfortable. In the car, you don't have heat and cold. At home, you may not have heat and cold because there's this constant manipulation of what's happening around us. Dialing the temperature and feeling comfortable. But what happens if there is no air conditioning? What happens if there's no electricity? what happened in New York. You know, in these high tower blocks, when for a week they had no power and people have to walk up 27 flights of stairs. And then they have freezer meals, you know, these microwave meals, they all defrost. And then they don't have a microwave. So the way that they've developed how to cook is to have a prepared meal, put it in the microwave, that's what you call cooking. But they couldn't survive with this type of system. So then you start to realize that our environment is very much organized for pleasure. We've really organized it, you know, with air conditioning, with air-conditioned cars, air-conditioned home, all these sort of things. So on a very simple level, just the changes in heat and cold, we can't tolerate so much anymore. And then things like hunger, thirst, sleep, no sleep, these type of things also, we tend to go between I'm happy, I'm not happy, because of something temporary that you've experienced. So these are the enduring sufferings. There's something else that Shantideva said, that there is no sin like hatred, no tolerance like patience. Thus, you should meditate on patience intensely with various methods. So when he's saying there's no sin like hatred, if you want to look for the worst sin, the worst negativity you can do, he's saying it's actually hatred. Because with hatred, you can do anything. Anything is possible. Whereas with patience, then you're enduring suffering, you're working with different difficult people, you're able to go home and not respond with anger. So it's very different when you have the practice of patience as opposed to the non-virtue of anger. Anger creates the situation of experiencing malice, fear, and increased ignorance. So from... Oh, where's my little doodah? Before I throw it on the floor. So from this, if we're practicing anger, then also malice becomes possible, fear becomes possible, increased ignorance. And this is the one believing in me. Loneliness. And lack of resources. So basically, if you're angry, you won't get the cooperation of others. So you'll start having negative thoughts about others. Malice is ill will. So you'll start having negative thoughts about others. Then what arises from anger is also fear. Because then you realize that others are not cooperating, don't like you. Others are maybe plotting against you. You know, many negative thoughts come from anger. Then increased ignorance is increased feeling of the me, the I, that wants happiness and doesn't want suffering, but is now getting the opposite. It's getting more suffering and less happiness. So because of that, then the feeling of I increases. This feeling of, what can I do in order to change things around me to make me happy? And then loneliness, because of anger, separating from others. Others don't want to be with you. And then lack of resources. The more you're angry, the more you create a negative energy to have things not work for you. It's interesting that then computers stop working, or the PA or the secretary disappears. You know, this sort of, the resources that you should have in order to do your job can disappear, or at home, the fridge breaks down, the microwave stops working, etc., etc. It also seems to have a negative effect on the environment, in that the environment doesn't cooperate. So, is this the sort of life that you want to lead? Remember, what we're doing is we're looking at the problems with anger, the benefits of patience, to persuade you not to be angry. Okay? It's not to beat yourself with this and say, okay, I'm angry, so then I have malice, I have fear, I have this, I have this, I have this, I'm a really bad person, and then you get more angry. There's no purpose in increasing the anger from this. What this is doing is establishing the anger is a problem. And if the anger is a problem, don't you want to give it up? And then we talk about the benefits of patience. Okay? So if you have irritability or if you have anger, then there's the potential for the things I put there, malice, fear, etc. Increasing this sense of me, of I. And even when we just have that, automatically others separate. Others detach from you. Others don't want to be as close to you. Okay? So you're using this information in order to find the sickness. It's like you're a doctor. You need to do an operation. You need to cut something out. But you need to be very careful about what you cut out. You only want to cut out the negative, and you want to promote the positive. So in this case, we're looking for the negative. We're looking for where we're going to cut with our scalpel. But we're using a mental scalpel, and we're saying, okay, this needs to go, and this needs to go, but what needs to stay? And what needs to be encouraged? So if you have fear, then now you know where the fear arises from. If you have ill will, negative thoughts, now you know where it arises from, because it's past habits of anger. And it doesn't just disappear, it leaves an imprint, it leaves seeds in the mind that then ripen when you're with others, then it ripens into a response, more anger, more fear, more ill will. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you have total lack of anger, then if you have a patient mind, what would be the quality of a patient mind? So it's once you remove one, you automatically have the other. Once you remove the reaction to the suffering, the irritability, the gross anger, once you remove that, then what you have is what we define as patience. Not so easy to have total patience, right? So we can have this impatience, this irritability, I think, with small things. No? There's little things that can set us off. Or it could be somebody who is always very patient until it's the very big thing. And in that case, I think if it's the very big thing, what they've been doing is enduring the suffering, but keeping a history. Little thing, little thing, little thing, little thing, and it's building and building and building. My mother had a saying for this, here we go, another Irish one, it's to do with camels. The straw that broke the camel's back. I don't know what this has to do with Ireland, but there's a saying in English that you put one straw and it breaks the camel's back, and it's like the camel can take more weight, more weight, more weight, and it's your mind taking on the suffering, 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 but it's not really dealing with it. It's suppressing the suffering. So there's a big difference between knowing that you're enduring suffering and just enduring suffering. To know means you're working with it. You know that you want to participate in patience, right? You want to get to somewhere. You want to endure the suffering because you want to get somewhere. So where do you want to get mentally? Where do you want to move to? You want to move to the mind of patience. But just to suffer doesn't necessarily mean that you're producing the mind of patience. It can mean that you're suppressing. So check. Are you pushing it down? Are you suppressing? In which case you come to one small thing and then the mind snaps. I think for somebody who gets angry, it should frighten you, because it's the sense of if you keep being angry, you're building more and more propensity, habits of anger in the future. And the anger develops and grows. It doesn't get less and less. It doesn't get better as you get older, for sure. If you practice anger on a daily basis, you can't say, and when I'm 60, I'm going to stop being angry. Because when you're 60 and trying to hit that golf ball and you can't hit it, you're going to go berserk, you know? Or something happens, whatever it is, if you can't endure the suffering when you're younger, as you get older, it gets more difficult. So start now. Don't say it's too late, because it's not. But also don't say, I'll wait until tomorrow. I'll wait until I'm older. I'll wait until the circumstances are better. You have to start now. Because it takes time. Depending on how much irritability and anger there's been in the past, depends on how long it's going to take. So, when your anger subsides, then what's your anger replaced by? And often embarrassment, guilt, regret. So, when you've behaved in a negative way, and you've said things that you wish you hadn't said, then often you get embarrassed afterwards. And then I often say to people, you know, if you've been angry at home, you have to go and buy flowers or chocolates, you have to say you're sorry a lot. So when you're angry, you have to do a lot of work afterwards to fix the anger. And then also the other problem is the other person doesn't forget. They may forgive you, but they don't forget. So they're building a memory of you being angry and that they can't trust you because you'll say anything when you're angry. So the other problem is it tends to create a division in the relationship. Whatever the relationship may be, friends, marriage, boss, whatever, it creates a division in the relationship. Then some people get so angry, they destroy possessions, wealth. There's cases where people kick their car, you know. So I think when you see these gross manifestations of anger, because you may only have irritability, you think it's not so bad. It's just little. But that little gathered together like drops of water starts to gather together into the potential of anger, even if it's small irritability. So people even can do terrible things like smashing up cars and stuff like that, but even they can get to the point where they want to commit suicide. So this is like the extreme, you know, of this irritability and anger becomes, I want to die. So think about, in the extreme of anger, how it's uncontrolled, you don't have discrimination, you don't have judgment, then is it beneficial for you, your family, the people that you work for? You obviously come to the conclusion, no. But then if you don't understand that and come to the conclusion no, you don't then come to the conclusion, I need to develop patience. Right? So this is why you strongly look at the sickness, the disease, and then you say, I must do something about this. Right? Otherwise you don't have the energy for it. Then when you think of somebody who is angry, are they under control or not? From what we've just said, are they under self-control or control by delusion? This is where you have to think. When somebody's angry, say your child, your partner, somebody at work, somebody's angry, are they under self-control or are they under delusion control? Right. So when they're under control by delusion, do they know what they're doing? Because we've just said they lose judgment and discrimination. So now you're looking at it from the other point of view. Somebody who's angry with you. You're the enemy and they're angry, right? So we've talked from one point of view where now we understand from our own point of view anger, irritability. But what if it's not me? If I'm patient and kind and blah, 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 and the other person gets angry. Should I get angry back? Why not? So now we look at it around like this. They are under control of self or delusion. We've established delusion. What's that delusion doing to them? It's taken away their discrimination and their judgment. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're saying. So now, in that situation, should you get angry with them? Why would you? Because they're like a psychiatric patient, right? They don't know what they're doing. They should be given compassion and love, but they shouldn't be given anger because it would be an inappropriate response. If that person then grabs a stick and hits you with it, should you get angry with the stick that hit the skin? Should you get angry with the person, or should you get angry with the delusion? If you're going to be angry with anything, what hurt you? Was it the stick? And then put in brackets, words. Right? So we're talking about stick as a metaphor, because usually people don't come up to you and hit you with a stick. They usually hit you with words, right? So is it the stick, in brackets, words, that's hurting you? Is it the person who's hurting you? Or is it the delusion that's hurting you? So if you can come to the conclusion, it's the delusion. And if you want to dislike something, dislike the delusion, not the person, then you separate the person from the delusion. And then you're able to see things as they are. And the example in the Buddhist text is, if you really love your mother, and this is easy for you to understand, if you really love your mother, and your mother is so sweet and so kind, she's always taking care of you, and one day she goes crazy. So your mother goes completely doolally, she picks up a stick, and she attacks you. You know, so doolally mother is now hitting you. What are you going to do? Punch her? Take this, you know, so quickly. You forgot all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the love and the kindness so quickly. It's all gone. Just all you can see is the hitting. What would you do? You would try to contain her. You would find the best possible help for her. And you would not say, my mother's a horrible person. I hate my mother. I'm angry with my mother. You'd say, she needs help. So what sort of help does she need? Something to do with the sickness, the delusion. All right? So then you can separate sickness, delusion, from the person. Don't get angry with the person, because if you do, it's an inappropriate response for what they're experiencing. You're not understanding with wisdom what they're experiencing. Do you get it? So this helps you to see things in another way. You start to switch things around so that rather than seeing me, my irritability, my anger, or them, their irritability and anger, instead of seeing this as acceptable. Well, it's, you know, I'm under stress, anxiety, the pressure at work, the stock market, or whatever it is, you know, this sense of pressure, and we make excuses for the irritability and anger, then we start to say, I must do something about it. From the point of view of behavior, from the outside world, but also what about the inside world? Then the other thing is, what does it do to you physiologically? And then you need to check inside, once you've been angry, or when you're feeling angry, if you can, check inside, how does it feel? It affects your heart, your blood pressure, your kidneys, your liver, your stomach. It affects virtually your whole body. So by being angry, you've increased your ability to have adrenaline within the body. That's chemical that makes you want to fight or to run. You're stimulating certain systems in order for you to fight or run, and then you're depressing, suppressing, pushing down the other systems in order to move the energy into the feet, and into the hands. So your digestion stops. Many things stop in order for you to be able to run or fight. But you're sitting in a car. You know, this is where the road rage comes from. You're sitting in a car and you're very angry sitting in a car. You're at the office and the boss has just said, what you did, 2 weeks of work is rubbish. And you feel, do I run or do I fight? So this type of reaction is inappropriate in the situation. It's too much. Because we haven't trained ourselves to voluntarily endure suffering. The small sufferings that we could endure, we don't. I often give the example of the waiter because this seems to happen a lot. You go into a busy restaurant and you sit down and you're looking at the menu and the waiter goes to somebody else, somebody who arrived after you. It's just a small thing. But the I can really come up and say, why aren't you serving me? Why aren't you coming to see me? Or you sit down and you don't get the menu. Everybody else gets the menu except you. Can you just sit there and think, it's okay, the menu will come? Or do you get irritability? So just these very small things, it's a few minutes. Can you endure it? The difference between the heat and the cold, can you endure it? The difficulties at work, where it's small things, can you endure it? And when you know that you're enduring it, this is suffering, I'm putting up with it, I'm enduring it. And there's a very good purpose because the result is going to be patience. I'm going to be able to tolerate these small difficulties.